Hey everyone, welcome to Wizard Politics. Guess we'll just drop right into it. So, I thought that I'd do this kind of as a regular segment where I just kind of check my politics but talk about it as I'm going through it since well, I think that would be cool. So, one of the things I've been really watching I watch Politico a lot. Politico is my main source of news because I typically keep up with political news specifically. It updates regularly, and the reporting is very facts forward instead of focusing on getting the gnarliest scoop. I feel like CNN and Washington Post and New York Times, they're really competing for like the scraps of, oh, I got the biggest scoop. But Politico is really just focusing on here's the news, here is what happened, and very good analysis in my opinion. So let's see. Elections, midterms are the biggest thing. I really did want to talk wizard politics. I think it's really important that if you're a magician, you're doing any kind of magic, any kind of spiritual stuff, that you keep up with politics because it is a part of your world that is going to affect your spirituality. Plain and simple. I don't think that you need to vote a certain way because you are a spiritual person or because you do certain religion. It's your business how you vote, but I think you should consider that you vote in terms of if you are a spiritual person. Like I think that you don't have to be political, period, but I think you need to consider how politics affects the world that you live in and the spirituality that you want to continue to practice. Especially if you're like, say, in any kind of earth religion, new age, magic, whatever. If you want to keep on having ingredients for all your spells, you need to really focus on environmentalism real fast. It's looking pretty bad. So, very interesting seeing Club for Growth steps on Trump relaunch with polls showing DeSantis beating him. This is a really big deal because the word on the street has been that Trump has been absolutely sure, and Trump's team has been presenting the idea that they're absolutely sure that Trump is going to beat DeSantis in the polls, and if this really sustains itself, this is going to be dangerous for Trump. Um, when they cross Trump, they lose, and that's not going to change. A Trump spokesman fired back. So, Club for Growth has these polls showing DeSantis ahead of Trump polling for 2024. Now, we'll see if this polling is actually trustworthy. Let's see. Anti-tax organization once was a Trump ally, but's broken with him over the last year. I wonder what made the difference for them. Polling memos showing the former president trailing DeSantis by double digits in one-on-one matchups in Iowa and New Hampshire. Ah, the first two states on the GOP nominating calendar. The surveys also showed DeSantis leading Trump by wide margins in Florida, their shared home state, and Georgia, which is holding a December 6th runoff for one of its Senate seats. Oh, yeah, so if we've got a lot more DeSantis voters than Trump voters, even in Florida, man, that's. I wonder if Trump was kind of assuming that he would get Florida because he's in Florida. But if he's going to be running against DeSantis, who is the governor of Florida and has been this big political player, that would be tough. He might not get the nomination. Like, he might just practically not get the nomination based on votes. Oh, that would be, it would be an interesting prospect. I really think that the American people have not been able to really speak about whether or not they want this guy to be president again. So, now whether or not I think DeSantis is a better candidate, it doesn't really matter. I'm not a Republican, so I'm not going to be nominating either. Um, as for which I would prefer, again, I'm not a Republican, so I don't have a horse in this race. I think the right Democratic candidate should be able to go up against anyone that the Republicans nominate. If the Democrats are dependent upon Republicans having a poor quality candidate, then the Democrats have a poor quality candidate. So, like, one of the reasons I like to watch politics is to analyze stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of like my Game of Thrones or Is there like a nerdier version of Game of Thrones where they don't bleed all over the place and they just argue about very boring sounding things that are actually very important? Let's see. Pence is giving his 2024 run prayerful consideration. Massachusetts' GOP governor urges the party to let go of Trump. Now that's interesting. Who was he? Massachusetts' governor. Which guy is this? Charlie Baker. He left the presidential line of his 2016 and 2020 ballots blank rather than vote for Donald Trump. Yep, I think he's been non-Trump since the start, so this is not a huge surprise. But him being very public about it means he doesn't feel like there's a political risk for him. Now, he's the nation's most popular governor, so it sounds like even if he is up for a re-election anytime, he doesn't feel like he's in danger for saying this. So that's interesting. That's signs of a sea change. Now the thing is, I don't just like have hunches or just watch facts about Trump. I pull tarot cards sometimes. I do readings because I'm really curious to see not just what happens with him specifically, but what happens with, say, just governance in America, for one, I live here, but for two, it's just like this is so historic. And so one of the things that I've always wondered, if somebody was there whenever it was the Cuban Missile Crisis, what were their tarot readings about the situation look like at the time? And so we've got situations like that now, and I've been doing readings, asking questions about things just to see what kind of answers I get, to see if the information that I get from the readings matches up with what I am seeing in news, and it really is. Now I'll say that there is a limit to what divination can do. Often there'll be answers like, there's no telling what someone is going to do specifically, but they're likely to make choices that fall in line with this logic, is often what my tarot cards will tell me about what someone's future actions will be. And so in politics, sometimes that can be a real guessing game, but sometimes it can be a really easy guessing game. There's only so many moves that someone can make. So if you study chess and the theories behind chess and how, you've got the different pieces and they can only make certain moves, and so if they're around other pieces, they can only go in certain places. That's how politics works too. It's actually pretty simple. And so I think it's a really, really good to keep an eye on reality. Like, politics is a stinky part of reality sometimes, I know, but it's really important to keep an eye on what's going on. I mean, it's better to know, in my opinion. So, I think part of the way that I get by is by sometimes pulling tarot cards, making predictions. Something I like to do is a face reading, not like in a. There's only so many ways in which I think that face reading is actually effective, but like someone's face is basically their presentation to the world of what it is that they want everybody to think that they're thinking, what it is that they want everybody to think that they're feeling. So this is like your mask. So the mask that someone is keeping up and how well they're able to keep it up, that's very interesting information. It's been very interesting looking at photos of Donald Trump over the years. If you compare photos of Donald Trump to whenever he was first elected, like it's not just that he's aged a lot. Like there's some times where I'm like, I can kind of see what plastic surgery he probably got. And there's other times where it's like I could tell that he's really angry, or that he's been arguing before because of just like how flushed his face is or how red his eyes are. And this is just information that you can apply to anywhere really. But I don't know. I've always felt like the politics of basically the politics of this millennium are going to be foundational. Like this is historic stuff, and I'm alive during it, and I might as well notice as much as I can while I'm here. I'm kind of like being my own history reporter in a sense. So let's see. Schumer tees up the vote to move ahead on same-sex marriage protections. This is a big deal since we've got the Senate. Obviously I'm a Democrat. Then like there's no reason not to do this. Also, it pushes Joe Manchin into a position where he needs to finally show a stand on something that isn't his thing that he really likes. Notice that Joe Manchin only likes making a stand on things that are his thing, that's his baby, and if it's anybody else's baby, he just throws it out with the bathwater. So, good to see Schumer going ahead with that. It's about time we just put in same-sex marriage protections. It's overdue, and anybody arguing that it's not necessary is very, very sus. The last G20, that and other stuff to watch. What if this is the last G20? Let's see what's going on. Like the Russia-Ukraine stuff is some of the stuff that I think people should be watching, especially if they are magicians. If you want to talk about magical parts of the world where a bunch of magical stuff comes from, Russia and Ukraine, this is where a bunch of like the super magical Slavic faiths that people love to, take holidays from in the neopagan circuit, like this is where your holidays come from. You might want to pay attention to what's going on over there. Like there's religious artifacts over there that are important to like anybody who cares about like a certain type of mysticism and a certain type of history. And so if you aren't invested in this, then you really need to consider getting invested in this. I'm not going to tell you which side is right or anything, but peace is essential. Like finding peace and like settling this conflict is very important when it comes to these people, when it comes to like heritage, when it comes to cultural artifacts, and when it just comes to human decency and the survival of this world. Like there's nuclear war at stake here, and that affects us all. So like if you ever feel like there's like something kind of like bigger, higher thing that's trying to call your attention, maybe it's stuff like this, the fact that there's bigger stuff in this world than our narrow little problems. What is it that we can do about it? Sometimes it's just calling attention to it. Like sometimes it's just making sure that people remember that there's bigger stuff happening, and that it's really important to you, even if it's not in your backyard. Let's see. The cameras flashed intensely as President Joe Biden met with Chinese leader Xi Jinping on Monday ahead of the Group of 20 summit in Bali, Indonesia. But don't get blinded to everything else happening. The G20 is a collection of the world's leading economies, but members have widely varying interests. Russian leader Vladimir Putin isn't showing up in person, but there's no G20 or G19 solidarity with his adversaries in Ukraine. Dictators will mingle with democratically elected leaders, and alignments will shift depending on the specific issue. I don't think that Putin feels comfortable traveling right now. Also, he's like, speaking of face reading, he has aged facially quite a bit. He used to be kind of showing himself as like the really young, strapping man, riding horseback or whatever, and visiting spas. And we're past that. We're past that era at this point. That's a farce. He's obviously not sleeping a lot. His face is really puffy. Just like, I'm kind of interested in this kind of face reading. So we've got like enhanced jowls here. I think that he's had some plastic surgery to remove that or handle it, but it's still coming in. Very weak chin here, which means that his mouth is downturning a lot. I think generally the fleshiness of his face is being affected by gravity a lot, which means, like I said, decreased sleep probably, and he's probably having to take a lot of stimulants and like other stuff to be able to stay awake and handle everything that's happening right now. And his skin is just looking really thin and translucent in a way, like that he's like really aged dramatically within a short time span. And that happens whenever you're not sleeping right, whenever you have a lot of stress. Like this is the kind of stuff that I think is very effective when it comes to face reading. Now, he's always got a very disciplined face. I have never seen him make facial expressions that he didn't mean to. So it's also just interesting studying his face and seeing like the deadpan, as it were. It's just that his deadpan used to look a lot more smug because his face looked a lot more young and it wasn't sagging all around him. Now it's kind of enhancing this natural frown that he used to not really have to him, and that smug look kind of enhanced this confidence that he used to exude. He doesn't really have that now. Let's see. That's a pool photo, so it's probably from the most recent months. I'm comparing it to my memory of photos of him from 4 years ago or so. People are not going to be putting that guy on a poster riding a bear. He's past his prime. Let's see. Who wants to hang out with the Saudi crown prince? Ooh, oh boy. Many unscripted moments at such events. Biden isn't known for his discipline, but given lingering tensions between Riyadh and Washington, the U.S. president is unlikely to bump fists again with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Yeah, what was up with that? That was weird, and it didn't really result in anything. So who will MBS hang with instead? Probably everyone else. Russia's war on Ukraine has so twisted the energy market that the Saudis, a leading oil producer, cannot be ignored. Even Biden ultimately had to engage him in July, despite pressure to shun MBS over the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi and the war in Yemen. That effort nonetheless failed to convince the Crown Prince to keep up oil output. In fact, he supported cuts. So, that effort was not only useless, but it seemed to make bad things happen. Many other countries in the G20 are less sentimental than America about Riyadh's human rights record. Crown Prince will likely make a point of spending time with Xi and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whose countries are massive energy consumers. And they also have massive human rights problems. European countries struggling with energy costs as they wean themselves off Russian supplies will likely want a few minutes with the royal too. Yeah, you got the one thing that everybody's asking for right now. I guess it's good you be you right now. How will richer countries react to developing nations' demands? More economically diverse countries, so they can come up and take their case to it, I guess. Let's see. After clinching Senate, Dems eye the unthinkable, holding the House. Is that still a reality? Do they think Democrats might still hold the House? I'm going to go over here now. Loading. Like, I didn't really have a determination of which way the election would go myself, so I'm kind of as mystified as everyone else. The Senate, I was pretty sure the Democrats were going to hold. Politico, are you doing that weird thing where you don't load because you... There we go. Oh, it's trying to calculate this script and stuff. There we go. Let's see. We got 2 of 4 on the Democrats, 214 on GOP. They need 4, and then Democrats need 14. Is what it looks like. So I know there's only 10 races that are actually uncontested, so maybe that's part of it. Let's see. This was updated when? This is from yesterday. This is from Sunday, so I don't know how up to date this is. Let's take a look. Why don't we just go over to... No, 538 is the worst. I used to use 538 for prediction when it came to politics stuff, and I think that it really took a nosedive whenever Trump got elected president. They didn't call that. No one called that. But 538 did not call that, and they had the data to call that, and afterwards I've just found that they really haven't called anything in a way that no one else has. They don't really have any kind of magic wand when it comes to data. Nate Silver doesn't seem to really have some kind of secret sauce. It's just that, like, he's had access to good data at times, and then he's used that access to make predictions that made sense. He's more likely to entertain things that go against conventional wisdom, that go against the fundamentals. Like, he's more quantitative analysis when it comes to, like, I'm going to pay attention to the data here, I'm going to pay attention to the numbers instead of what usually happens according to history. That's what quantitative analysis is. So he leans more towards that, but, like, the quantitative analysis I mean, everybody's been agreeing that that's been flawed for the last few years now, that the polls are actually flawed. So I just haven't been satisfied. Let's see. I'm going to load House results. Let me close these other Politico tabs and close this YouTube tab right here. That might give me a little bit more RAM to work with. Apparently, I'm asking a lot of my computer, and all these vote crunching machines that they're loading onto web pages sure do take up a lot of bits and boobs. So House GOP leads, but doesn't really mean anything because of how the races are. So Democrats fended off the GOP in most of the toss-up districts Republicans targeted. Now it's not likely either party could have more than a slim majority next year. Democrats remain in the hunt for an upset win. Well, that's right at the top. Who's winning the House? Seats and states. Alaska? Alaska? Really? Y'all are going to Democrat? Okay, I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, like, Hawaii, I'm not surprised. It's just, like, not surprising. But, like, Alaska, you're going to give us a Democrat? Okay. We'll take it. Let's see. Races they're watching. Okay, a few of them have been called. 13th. Here we've got the Democrat on top. It's California. 78% of the vote in. Moderate Democrat against a GOP businessman. I guess we'll see. I don't really have a leaning for that one way or the other. 53% of the vote is in on this one where we got the Republican on top, so we don't really know where this data is going to go if it's only that much vote. The heck's taking California so long? Let's see. This one went red. Nebraska went red. New York's 22nd, goodness. 22nd district. Williams versus Cannoli. 97% of the vote is in, but the margin is pretty small. So yeah, I guess they're going to have to wait that one out. Wow, this sure is different than people said it was going to be 2 months ago. Isn't that funny? So one of the things is that if you have any kind of predictive sense or any kind of psychic sense, if you watch political news, you can test your prediction abilities by predicting how votes are going to go and how like, if you see poll results. Now, the thing about polls is that it's hard to tell whether or not they're really accurate or if they just reflect the opinions of people who like to answer the phone or the opinions of people who like to fill out polls. And also, how do you determine that you're actually getting a representative sample of the vote in the area? There's all these different like questions. Recently, in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of polls enter a lot of new polls dumping data into the polling data that are all like very GOP leaning, and the data is very biased towards GOP in a way that would make some people think that the vote's going to go more GOP than it actually does. And so we really have a question here of like, when you look at the poll results, are you looking at what the people actually want? So if you have any kind of psychic senses, any kind of empathy, especially for like large groups of people or like, the zeitgeist or something like that of a large area like a county or a state, then start feeling out. Like, if you look at a poll of your local area and the poll says that it's leaning this way in terms of political opinion or in terms of anything, really, it doesn't have to be politics, but there's so much polling in politics that the data is going to be there and it's going to be coming out regularly, so you can test yourself regularly. Like, look at the poll and think, does that seem true? Does this data actually seem reliable? And feel it out. And the thing is, if it's an election year and there's going to be a vote on the subject that it's being polled on, you can actually test this theory. You just wait until the actual vote takes place and you see which way the vote goes. I mean, obviously, if it's something that you can vote for, then your vote itself is going to be part of the data. But I think we can safely say that unless the issue comes down to only one vote, your vote is not polluting the data all that much. You're kind of just a drop in the bucket. So basically, if you want to be able to test out your predictive skill, you need to watch something that's predictive. And there's a lot of predictive work in politics. And it's been really, really helpful to get my idea of, like, what is. There's a lot of opinions flying around right now. There's a lot of ideas out there fighting for each other. And how do you tell who's right? How do you tell who actually wins in this weird information war? And one of the ways is that you keep up with the news, and you figure out which data is verifiable, which data is reliable. You start getting your own sense of what's actually true and what actually feels grounded in reality. There's been times where I've seen headlines that say something, and internally I have this reaction of, that can't be true. Not in an outrage sense, just in I have a very strong opinion that is not a fact. And I'll be like, okay, well, the article is saying this, but if I click on the headline, then I'll read the reporting, and it'll be like very early reporting. There's not much data from police, or there's not much data from reporters on the scene. Hardly anybody knows what's going on. And so later on I'll check the news, and it'll turn out like there's a case of mistaken identity. They have lots more info come out, and the situation is much different now. A good example is, I think, especially say 5 years ago, because reporting has improved on this kind of stuff, but police shootings, whenever police have especially shot persons of color or mentally ill people, whenever it's been covered in the last 5 years, sometimes 5 years ago specifically, in the last 5 years things have improved. Things have slowly improved on the reporting, but 5 years ago there would be data that comes out, the police department will make this statement. They're we reviewed all of the footage, and the guy obviously had a gun. And then whenever the footage is actually reviewed, it turns out that he definitely did not have a gun. And so the reporting that I'll read, at first, that says that he has a gun, I'll read that, and some part of my mind is that doesn't check out. That doesn't make sense. Some part of it is confusing. It doesn't make sense. Well, if you have that feeling while reading something, just hold on to that feeling. It means something. Even if later on it turns out that you were just reading a typo or something, it means something. But just wait on it. It's okay that you don't know. Staying comfortable with having a question on something is hard. Sometimes it's easy to just go look up some kind of conspiracy theory, or go find some really, really hyper community that's constantly focused on this subject, and they're making up a bunch of theories, and they're making a bunch of conjecture. It's easy to go try to find something like that to get a conclusion that you want. But if you wait, you'll probably find out something more interesting and more useful. It's just, the truth takes time to come out. It takes time to manifest. And if you're interested in manifestation of the light of knowledge, then oh boy, you're going to have a fun time watching politics. So, really, I've got to say that the election has been dominating the news cycle to the point where I don't even watch news shows at this point. I'm kind of exhausted. I don't watch night shows, the late night comedy shows. They're all about politics, and they're all saying the same thing. And they were all saying 2 weeks ago, Seth Meyers and Stephen Colbert and Trevor Noah and everyone else were saying, SNL was saying that the Republicans were going to sweep the midterms, and they were going to get the Senate, and they were going to get all the Congress, and they were going to take out Joe Biden with the Navy SEAL jump squad. I don't know. It just sounded like they were going to institute martial law with elephants here to, watch us. And none of that happened. And in fact, the Democrats got the Senate with probably more lead than they had before. They might get the majority in the House. Everyone's throwing a big fit about how this never happens. And, like, maybe focusing so much on how it happened before was a mistake. Especially considering that so many of the times that this happened before have nothing to do with what's going on right now. So, all of this is really good stuff to learn if you're a magician, because guess what? All of the stuff that magicians have to draw from material wise, it's all from the past. Almost all of it is from the past, and a lot of it is steeped in stuff that is way, way old and way, way not useful, like way, way past its time. We really need a lot of authors to come and write new material that is actually set in this time zone. Like, just in this time period. I think this is why people are going to Marvel movies instead of reading magic books, because quite honestly, the Marvel movies are grounded in this time. They're more consistent. They teach you to do cool stuff. So, yeah, kind of ranging around, but anyway, that's what politics does for me in magic. That's wizard politics. Hope you'll have a lovely evening. Remember to vote next time that there's a vote. If you didn't vote this time, it's okay. I'm sure you didn't mean it and you had a good reason for not voting. But, like, if there's a race that comes down to one vote, and you were in there, and you didn't vote, you're gonna be like, dang, I could have changed everything, but I didn't. So, make sure to vote. Make sure to subscribe and to like and to comment. It's all very important. Cheers.